G'day punters, welcome back to the Punters Academy review for Saturday's racing at Randwick. John, we got rain during the meeting. Obviously the track deteriorated prior to the commencement, given some rain. There was plenty of wind and it seemed like three positions for winning, and that was leaders back in OSL. Benson run was great. One off in the straight was great. What do you have to say?
Yeah, it was a nightmare, wasn't it? It was, yeah, well, it's just when these tracks become like this, obviously, mind you, very testing track. It was just trying to hope that your horse ended up where you predicted it might. Obviously, changes in tactics, people all aiming for the same spots, and then fitness came into play a bit more than we probably predicted on Thursday. But you did say the inside would be the spot to be. Yeah, it's just a bit of a nightmare, isn't it? When you get tracks like this early in the spring, what we do with this form going forward. But we'll probably do our best to identify the ones to at least be very forgiving of, as much as anything.
Absolutely. There's quite a bit of talk on Twitter about how, great days racing and all that sort of thing. Well, they're not great days racing for connections of the other horses that total forget runs and can't possibly win under the conditions. But from a punting point of view, they're great meetings, and it worked out really well for me. So I'm pleased about that, and I'm sure other people did well on the day too, as well. So can't complain. Bit more in the tin, very much needed.
Yeah, always needed. All right.
Let's start off with race one. Let's start off there, and of course we've got the highway here. We've got a pretty solid tempo here, race one, and we saw the two-year-old turn three, Oval Ridge, which I think we made a horse to follow. I made a horse to follow a few weeks ago, or whenever it was last on the show. Get the job done after failing at Randwick last start, after sitting wide, no cover there. So yeah, it was well supported, got the job done, and recorded decent enough time, I thought, overall, and looks to have a bit of a future, this horse. I'm not sure where it goes now. That was its fourth run, I think it was, this prep. And who knows what they're going to do, whether they're going to try and keep it up or tip it out and do something with it. I also backed Prince Deconi in the race, which would have actually been a better result for me, but couldn't quite hang on there. Extra approval. Look, I thought its run was a forgive run and ran better than the margin indicated. Participated, total forgive run, didn't handle the track. And Jalmari late indicated that it's come back pretty well this preparation, and will certainly be suited over further anyway. What do you have to say, John? What are your comments here?
Yeah, I just wonder what they'll do, whether they, the Kosciuszko tickets come out this week, and this horse is obviously qualified for a Kosciuszko. So whether it's done enough to have someone ring and make a call, and whether that'll be the right thing for this horse or not, I'm not sure. But maybe that's what he does, is just sit and wait for the phone and maybe freshen it up and aim for a Kosciuszko if they get a ticket. Good ride. I couldn't have found the leader like you. I just thought it was a massive risk at 1,200. Thought it was a great ride and a good effort. Like, they beat the rest comfortably. I definitely think the horse to follow out of the race, apart from the winner, as a horse going forward, is Jalmari. Like, yeah, huge at both runs back from mine. Bit unlucky first up, ran into some dead ends, came wide here and ran really well. I didn't mind the run of this horse. It gets beat 100 metres, Mosquito. Just thought it made a nice dash down the middle here at this point and just gets really tired late. Obviously, this was not the place to be. And I thought it needs to go back in grade. It's probably not a highway horse. It's a bridge too far. But if it went back to a Grafton race or something and popped up, I could find it. I thought they were the main two sort of forgive horses that just the race wasn't run to suit them, or the pattern, everything against them.
Look, a number of horses rated up on Saturday. I haven't done the final times, which I'll do this evening when I get them and go through and review it in more detail. But there's certainly a lot of horses that rated to seemingly new peaks, and I think some of that was obviously attributable to the in-run advantage that was gained by a lot of these runners. So that'll bring them back a bit as well. But anyway, on to race two, 1,800 metres, solid tempo again, John. What do you have to say here?
Let's start her up. What have we got? We've got race 2. So this was, I didn't even seriously. I tried to do the form for this race and penned it, refused to do a market. So didn't excite me too much on paper. The time, as you said, like everything's kind of up in the air a little bit. They've seemed to have gone through the roof here. The horse, sort of forgive-wise, have to skip forward to show it. This horse is just such a weird horse to try and line up. Is it called Baucio del Mist? Obviously went like a rocket at Canterbury last start and seems to have put in another really strong performance sort of back and wide. It's a grey horse down the outside here. Complete forgive for this fellow. What's this called? Dick Whittington. And every chance of the rest. But they've gone so quick and they've held on. It just shows you how testing it was and hard to run on. The grey up the inside obviously does run on in the right part of the track, and I don't know what to do with this horse, whether you say it's a good run or whether it's flattered by the speed.
Look, it was definitely flattered by the position in terms of being on, up on the inside there late. Look, I thought it was a good run too on face value, and then I went back through the times and looked at the last 400, and I've got that race going about 4.7 lengths below standard for par for the last 400. So, and the last 200 wasn't that much chop either. So perhaps a little bit flattered, but still was a decent run on face value, I thought. Scorched Land, Total Forgive, both trainer and jockey, I think, said it didn't handle the going. Bella Violet is a Total Forgive for mine. Once again, just didn't handle the ground at all. So I think, you just forget those runs and when assessing them going forward.
It's probably an interesting snapshot of the whole day. If you try and predict how this horse went compared to Essential Sky, the difference is they've raced in a similar spot in the run. One gets the inside, one's come down the middle. It'll be interesting to that's basically trying to interpret the whole day as a video watcher, I suppose, is lining up these two horses in different paths.
Interesting that the winner has gone as seemingly as good as it did. I backed a few in this race, including the winner. I backed it in Brenner, and there was one over here. I had something on Scorched Land. Look, the story with it, I suppose, is it's had 3 runs now for David Payne, or should I say 4 runs now for David Payne, that horse, and it sort of went, 13, 1350, 13, 1800. Which was a bit strange, I suppose, on face value. So if you were doing form in the race, you'd be certainly questioning that. But D Payne does seem to have a very profitable record for punters going up in distance. So, maybe there's something in that.
Jump him like both ways a little bit, doesn't he? Like he does some funny things with preparations, but his horses seem to be racing really well at the moment. If you can work out if they're ready or not, I think you'd be struggling not to be profitable with his stable at the moment.
Yeah, he does seem to be going well. If you look at his recent numbers, last 100, he's won 15 of those and winning about almost 9% on turnover, and that's on adjusting the SP there. That's a pretty good result, and certainly in recent times his stable does seem to be firing a bit better than normal. But maybe it's his time. I suppose all of them come in and out of form, don't they?
100%.
Okay, let's get on to race 3. Yep. What have we got here, John? We've got the Sneaky Page of God Bless Its Heart. Fast tempo here.
Yeah, fast. And this is, I sent out Rubinoki. I just thought it was a silly price early, and when that sort of pattern looked like it established itself. And of course, I found the one race where the 2 leaders sort of carved each other and caved. It was still a little bit disappointing, I thought, Rubinoki, and the winner went a little bit better than I thought it was probably capable of, obviously in the right spot, but seems to be a horse that needs to be cuddled, has a short sort of sprint, and then one bats, and it was left in front quite a long way out and fended them off. Whether there was a little bit of interference behind, but still, it would have been unlucky to get beaten. I think it sort of established a good break, didn't it, and just held on.
Yeah, exactly. And the run of the second horse was very good, considering. And I don't know if we've previously mentioned this horse, John, but it's going well, it seems.
Sneaky Page, or which one? Sorry,
no.
Gelay.
Gillette, yeah.
Yeah, so it's one of the horses that gets. If it came wide and did this, you would have said it was the run of the day, wouldn't you? Like it was probably was the run of the day. To be fair, even if it was back from the inside, I know they've gone along quick, but then they did slow down a touch. But it was still a very strong run, like very well set up.
Yeah, certainly, yeah, for sure. I mean, last 800 sectional rating wise, it's run best for the day, best for the meeting, I should say. Third best last 600, 400, best last 200. The thing that worries me about when horses do that, given the circumstances, is when the sectionals, particularly from 800 home, aren't much chop and look about 3.4 lengths below the last 400 and 200. And so that just worries me a little bit. Certainly the horse is going well and not potting it, and would say that it would be competitive in similar races going forward. But that's probably just sort of the thing that's held me off making it a horse to follow.
Yeah, and I'd say the other thing for me is that if it had a run 6th or 7th, beaten an extra half a length, you probably would be much kinder to it, because it's run past that dead set wall of horses that have all raced closer to the fast speed and grabbed them on the line. You're not going to get much value out of it next time either. I think it's going to be pretty well exposed. So, yeah, I think if that's sort of the tipping point between being nice to it or neutral, I'd probably stay pretty neutral. This bloody horse is going to kill me. Party for one.
Yeah, party for one. Total forgive.
Oh, my God. It's going to be the end of me. If it just sort of went 3 weeks between runs, had a little quiet trial, jockey change, oh my God, he could win a nice race. It's been cast its whole life. 7 Bells was okay too, from back in the pack and actually fought off Party for One late, but entitled to had a run back from a spell. And Shahonka was just out in no man's land, but I don't know what to do with that horse.
Indeed. Okay, let's move on to race 4, the City Tats Club Cup over 2,400 metres. Leader did a great job here, and another good result for those that followed or followers to the stable, and certainly, on ratings and form, it did look the one to beat, I thought.
Just had 4 weeks and synthetic hoof filler or something. They were the only two little. Was it 4 weeks? I'm not sure, but it was a little break between runs.
It was 28 days. It had trialled in between, but it's to be fair, its last start over the same course and distance was when it won was also 28 days, and the previous race, where it had a few excuses, was also 28 days. So it seems to race well spaced. Its runs, as I said, it had the trial. The synthetic hoof filler, I'm probably less concerned by that than maybe some others. I suppose I look at all these things and I try to judge them based on what it's like for a punter, as opposed to what it might be anecdotally. And that's not something that concerns me too much.
No, and like you say, it wasn't as if it was a break in its prep, wasn't. It was probably due to peak, if anything. Went 14 to 2,000, ran well, jumped to 2,400, which is not easy to do with the trial between, ran well, trial again. So it looks like they've really got this horse under control, and I agree. It's a bloody promising horse, isn't it? It was probably a little bit lucky to win last time, even though it didn't have a great setup. It was still a good win, but this shows that it's right in the zone, the horse.
Bit of support for that horse with the early move there from Chalkstream too.
Yep.
In this race, she's a man-eater.
Another strange placement. We were sort of talking about David Payne, 18 to 2,400, second up for Bazooka. It has to be a forgive as well, I thought. Sorry, sure. Raging Bull.
Raging Bull, yeah, the one that's out there 3 wide, isn't it? Too much to bear. I think put a line through that.
Yeah, I don't think it handles the wet, and considering he scratched 712 horses from the meeting, I thought it would have been on the list. I'm not really sure why it wasn't, and it's a prime candidate for a little Waller Freshen. Shows up in a 2,000 metre race in 35 days or 49 days or something, and runs really well.
Indeed. Okay, let's get on to the Concord Stakes. Plenty to talk about here. Solid tempo. Eduardo gets the job done in fine style. Goes to a slight new peak. Look, I haven't put the in-run discount there. Well, I know you'd say new peak for a 9-year-old. I did hear that Joe Pride said he hadn't had the horse going better. Look, obviously that'll come down once I apply the in-run. So it'll be interesting to see what the total figure comes out at once I do that. yeah, prior to any in-run adjustments, it's gone to a slight new peak. What do we say here? Big betting blow. There's probably something to talk about there in a question that we've got later on, so we won't cover that now. Handle the Truth, I thought, went pretty well first up there. Certainly does look in for a decent prep.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It brings back memories of Shelby 66, Handle the Truth. Like it's gone so well. The winner sort of even was raced fresh, sat outside lead, pulled a little bit, if anything, runs away from him. It's way too good. And then, what does Handle the Truth run mean? I don't know. Like you'd say that on that, it's like if it gets similar conditions, the Kosciuszko is just about over. If it produces a run similar to that.
We know it can race better than that, and it certainly can return figures better than that. I still believe that this horse is much better on firm ground and can improve, a few lengths for sure.
Which
on
horse?
That run, Handle the Truth. I'm talking
wow,
about.
okay.
Yeah. So I'm saying this horse is suited by good tracks. I'm not saying it can't be competitive on tracks worse than that, because obviously this was a good run. But I think it'd be better on a good track. So yeah, firm surface. I think it's in for a reasonable prep.
Yeah, and if I pulled the ticket, it'd be the first call I'd be making.
The question is, when are we going to get firm tracks again, John?
The 12th.
The 12th December.
Of never. 12th of never. I'm very worried about the rest of the carnival. These tracks are it's no one's fault. They're just completely cooked, aren't they? Like, what can you do? What can you do?
Well, I suppose they just can keep moving the rail around, and which they will, and in terms of programming the meetings and so forth, that'll obviously have some bearing on it. But as a punter, you've got to sort of, I suppose, do your homework first and know what you're going to expect from a track, based on the rail placement, based on information that you've got at hand, and make a call. That's all you can really do.
Exactly.
Okay, let's get on.
A little bit more nimble at the moment because they are throwing up some weird,
indeed,
weird setups. What's this one?
So let's get into the Furious Stakes. I thought pretty fast tempo here as well, and interesting race, John.
Yeah, it's the problem is, what does this do? Like, they're obviously, these fillies are on their way through to the flight. What's the next one? Furious. Can't remember what the next one is. But what's it going to do to them? So at least the two horses that have run 1-2, hard fit, both really good performances. You'd expect that it won't knock them around too much. They'll continue to improve. They obviously had plenty in their favour here. But what does a taxing run do to a horse like Paris Dior or She's Extreme here, who was definitely a forgive? She's Extreme. I don't know. Sure. It's interesting. Sure. The two horses up front have run really well, haven't
they? Excuse me. We spoke about Paris Dior, I think, on Thursday. And look, I was sort of questioning the merits of its trials this time in.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here.
You remember last prep, they gave it like 2 or 3 trials and absolutely banged it out, and it looked like it was flying, and it got ready for that Inglis race, wasn't it? Which was just they're often overplayed. Got the job done there, and
Percy Sykes, wasn't it?
Yeah, Percy. Was it?
I think so.
Sorry, it might have been. Yeah, you might be right. Well, that's even better. That's actually a lot better race. But it was a sort of a fill race that nothing went to from memory, and maybe that was her. She probably has to prove herself at this sort of class further in distance, whereas a horse like She's Extreme's already got the mile form. And
well, I suppose Willinga Beast ran second in that race, and North Star Lass ran 5th. So that form, and of course we're seeing good form from horses like She's a Belter since then as well. I'm just questioning whether Paris Dior's come up, made any improvement.
Yeah, that's right. Or exactly, if she's made any improvement, or whether, I'd certainly think She's Extreme's proven. I think it was a smart play, scratching She's a Belter. I think sort of missing that run on that track won't hurt her.
What about Seven Veils? It raced pretty keen, John, and it's got to be a forgive as well, isn't it?
There were two I thought that were, and I 100% it, and I think it'll be ready next start. Sort of race wide, 2 in at Seven Vales. It was the one that sort of got cast, and the other horse is outside it. Ends up outside it. Madame Pomeroy. They did intend to be on speed and got caught wide, so dragged right out. Seven Vales is the one in front of it, and the white cap with the green. Both pretty solid efforts, and both got to the wrong part of the track. I just thought sort of Madame Pomeroy got knocked off its balance there on the back of She's Extreme, got completely lost, and sort of came again late. I think it'll be forgotten a little bit more than the guys up front. So I'd be very forgiving of Madame Pomeroy, and Seven Vales obviously finished alongside it.
Okay, let's get into the tramway now for Zaki. Nice little jiggy jog there, well rated by James McDonald. Average tempo, and got the job done and returned in good order. I've probably got this performance a bit down on what some might have it, but that's the game, isn't it? All about opinions. I thought Ice Bath did a tremendous job. I actually had something on Nimalee in this race. That was about the only bet I had, I think. At longer odds, I just thought it represented a bit of value, and I suppose it went as good as it can go. Well, not as good as it can go, but under the circumstances. Converge was disappointing, but they're saying it just didn't handle the track at all.
Yeah, and obviously always improves the run. I thought he was very short. I don't know why they sort of tried to ride him a bit closer, which is not his go really either. First up, I'd be forgiving of him. Just a nothing race, wasn't it? Like, it's probably one of the worst weight for age races I've ever seen. Profondo, I don't know why they keep trying to ride him with a sit. He's just been pulled himself into the ground at both runs back. Ice Bath was good, but what does that say? It just scares the hell out of me about the whole race in general.
What do we say? What do we say about Profondo, John? I mean, everyone was sort of expecting it would go to the Chelmsford over the mile, and what do we say? Do we just say it's a poorly managed horse?
Yeah. You can just tell here that he just wants to get going, and he's just so scared to give him a dig. They're trying to teach the horse to settle. I don't know. He's a bit of a nightmare, isn't he? I don't know if it's mismanagement of the horse. It's just tough to if he's probably one of those candidates that he's a $10, $20 million horse that would love to have his nuts cut out if you wanted to get the best out of him on a racetrack, which is not going to happen. So he just might be one to I think he's going to need everything to go his way to get a result in a high-class race.
Okay, let's get on to the Chelmsford average tempo here. We saw Night Sorter well spec'd given the pattern on the day, coming back off that Brisbane Cup win and getting the job done, and good ride there by Tim Clark.
Yeah, if you want to bottle a race of how to have everything in life possibly go your way in a race, this is probably it. Absolutely walked. Allowed to sprint up. Nothing really chased. Like, the time's obviously up in the air a little bit here. Probably too bad to be true on paper, but just a nothing race. What do you do with it? Treat it as a barrier trial. Benno was probably a complete forgive. I know Surefire was a absolute complete forgive.
Yep.
And the rest went okay. Like, never compromised, went okay. Who else was there?
Entente pulled up lame 2 out of 5, so forget it.
Yeah. He seems a light of other days, isn't he? A bit Entente. He seems like he's really under the pump. Stockman and those horses that were all second up, I'd probably be pretty forgiving of them. Just a nothing race.
Okay, let's get on to race 9 then. I think we're up to race 9, aren't we?
You obviously agree with that one. There's nothing race here. There was nothing.
Well, I mean, we've mentioned the horses. I mean, Benno,
yeah.
Surefire. I think they're horses to follow, and you forgive Stockman, and you forget on Tom, and you just go, well, Night Sorter was really well suited. It was pretty obvious that it was going to be the default leader.
Yeah.
I thought, well, at least that's what our maps had him, and so it was suited by the pattern and position and backed accordingly.
A little Mark Lambourne sort of thing there is another one to watch, is when Gay's got a loose leader and the second horse is also one of Gay's, it's usually very handy, because for whatever reason, when Gay's got a sort of nominated leader in a race, they tend to let it lead, and when one of hers is running second, they tend to control and get the chance to use their fitness edge. Obviously, this horse was first up, but they get the chance to choose when to put the pressure into the race, and it's a huge tick for on pace Gay Waterhouse horses when they're going to get control of races. So it doesn't always unfold that way, but just something to keep an eye out for.
Indeed. On to race 9, the 1278. Fast tempo here, John. Saw Hell I Am get the job done in decent style, I thought.
This thing was just absolutely smashed late, wasn't it? I just remember looking and seeing it was like $7 early in the day, something similar. And then when I saw they crossed the line, the totes were like 2-1. I think one of them was under 2-1.
In race 9, the totes.
Probably want to look at the wrong race. I'll put the right race up
yeah,
for you.
2-1 all totes. Queensland 310.
There you go.
Panned out. Sorry, the winner we're talking about now.
Yes.
310, 320, 330.
Yeah, very well backed. There were a couple of scratchings too, weren't there? There were a couple of late scratchings, so I'm sure that $7 or $8 was mythical, but it was basically back to the exclusion of all. Silent Impact, insanely short.
Well, it's pulled up mildly lame, 1 out of 5, and they're saying it failed to handle the track. I would have thought it might have raced a little bit more forward. Tiger Legend, I thought, was a forgive, John.
This is this guy, yeah. So Les Bridges' horse. This is kind of the time of the day where they start riding him up a little bit upside down, isn't it? So the winner just got all favours. I've got no issue forgiving these sorts of horses, but they are in the right spot and they're not going quick, are they? So it's a little bit dicey.
Well, the tempo was fast. I mean, it may not have looked that.
Oh, sorry, no, I'm looking at the wrong race. You're right. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong race. Yep. Pardon me. I kind of just switched off with this race just because none of these horses were well set up. The only horse that was well set up lobbed in the right spot, and the only horse that I thought was dangerous for it is this horse War Eternal that kind of couldn't quite get to where he wanted to go, and as soon as he couldn't get right on speed, he sort of grabbed hold of it, dragged it out of the race, and I thought it was a complete forgive. War Eternal down the outside.
Okay, let's move on to race 10. Below average tempo here. We saw Bjorn's horse get the job done, Kiss the Bride, in a tight finish. What do you have to say here, John? There's maybe a few excuses. Alcyone raced wide for a little bit. Sacramento was lame, 2 out of 5, so completely forget it. I would have thought it was going to race closer forward. And Bold Mac needs to trial again before it can race after starting well in the market.
Yeah. What do you do with the race? I'm not sure. I thought there was a really bad ride here from should have won. What was it called? Wild Chap. Sort of took the lead early, then for whatever reason sort of gave that spot up, and as soon as he gave the spot up, he dragged off the leader's heels, ends up about 6 wide in the straight. So rather than leading on the fence or following the leader, he sort of ends up outside leader and then 4 or 5 off and gave the run to the winner, Kiss the Bride. So I just thought it was a pretty steady ride in a bad-looking race. I didn't think there was anything I really wanted to be too forgiving of. Niffler does sit a little bit wide, but really fit, and obviously they didn't go fast at all here, so I don't want to be overly forgiving of it. And Wicklow it just looks like its wheels are spinning, doesn't it, Wicklow?
Well, it sort of, tried to make a few different runs and it come inside, and then might have been a very small margin cost there, but it wins its share of races, I suppose. But yeah, pretty bunch finish here at the end. Not sure what to make of it.
No, Opacity kind of gets around their heels late and looks forgivable, but it's testing the patience as well. I don't think any of these horses are horses you want to hang your hat on. Yardtown was pretty good first up, but again, led and controlled. And the other horse, which is Alcyone. I get all these horses confused. Alcyone was pretty good up on speed too, so but it's a bit of a nothing race for me.
Okay, horses to follow, John.
Holy heck. Horses to follow.
Any?
Horses to follow. I think Party for one, but it needs things to go its way. As in, needs to find the right race, needs run-on conditions. I would love a rider change. the horse, and blinkers on, whether it's next start or the start after. As soon as they whack the blinkers back on, Party for One, tune in. And there was another horse in the 3-year-olds, isn't it? Yeah, I still think North Star Lass is a horse that's going to get right through to the Flight Stakes and Mile or whatever. So I think even though it's had things go its way in the right part, it's a horse I want to continue to follow in those filly series.
Okay. For me, I'm going to go to the Tramway, first of all, and select Ice Bath as one of my horses to follow on the day. And then out of the Chelmsford, Total Forgive Surefire. I think I made it a horse to follow after its first up run from memory. If I didn't, I should have. So I'm going to say it and Benno, who was a cracking run first up. I thought went really, really well again and is on track for a big race this preparation. So
I agree with both of them heavily. And the other, Madam Pomeroy is the other horse that I missed that I would like to follow.
And obviously, there's lots of forgives where you just put a line through their runs on Saturday and totally disregard them going forward when assessing them. I think we've probably covered most of those.
Kind of the horses you've identified to have shown that they're in good form prior to Saturday, so they've done something really positive. Then Saturday they've run really well with forgive, so it's a bit different to horses that are, say, first up, that you don't really know what they've shown. At least these guys have done something, everything against Saturday, run well with everything against. So it's a highly likely they'll bounce back to something pretty strong next time around.
Indeed. Anything to talk about from anywhere else around the place, John? I suppose there's plenty of action in Melbourne, and we can talk about that, but we're not going to review that meeting. But
no, the sprint like that was just so ugly, wasn't it? It was just weird, like zoo style. It's just it's not really worth talking about. I don't think. Worry about it later.
Okay, let's get on to our questions this week. Look, unfortunately, we're a bit thin on the ground again. Punters, you've got to get yourself in the gear here. I think we're going to jackpot, John. We agree we're going to jackpot again, so that'll be $300 next week. Whilst there's some reasonable.
Yeah, we do appreciate the questions coming in.
Absolutely,
still,
for sure.
We just want a bit of depth, bit of someone with a. Come out with something a little bit special, and 300 will jump in.
Absolutely. But still, let's get into them. Of course, the show's brought to you by Top Sport. And of course, punters, if you don't have an account with Top Sport, you need to get in touch with Tristan or one of the team there. They'll get you sorted. We are coming into, or we're already into, the spring carnival, and of course, the bigger limit supply from the time they go up, and they'll bet you even bigger as they get late in betting as well. So get into it. Okay, first one this week from Les. Les has asked me to explain as much as I can how I get those jockey ratings that I released yesterday, being Saturday morning. I think I posted those, and how much data it takes to what you consider to be an accurate number of rides. And as an add-on to that question, what would determine an alteration in the current rating? Right, so Les, in regards to an alteration, that they get recalculated every day. So that's done automatically. In terms of explaining how much or how I got to them, look, I'll just go back to my post there, John, just one sec. There was 2 tables I posted, and all I did was take I think it was the top 20 metropolitan riders based on prize money rank from Racing Australia for the last season. That's the 2021-22 season, and rank them in order based on prize money, 1 to 20. No surprise, Jay McDonald at the top. And then I put next to it an ability rating in pounds based off my current figures, being that 0 was best. So James McDonald and Hugh Bowman, Jamie Carr come out at 0, and Nashville Rilla and Craig Williams came out at 1. And then we go down to people like, D. Oliver and T. Berry at 3, and John McNeil 4. And then I think I had some going down to Cody Jordan. It was a 7 on my figures. And then what I did was I took that same list of riders and then what did I do? I took that same list of riders for the same season, obviously not including all riders or any other riders who I think rate better or worse. And then I put a value rank against them, which is another metric that I use. And Nash comes out on top, and Jay Collett 2nd, Craig Williams 3rd, Baron Vorster 4th, and James Allman 5, and so on and so forth. So and of course that's from the point of view of a punter and how I see them as representing value. So how I get to them is the ability ratings are calculated automatically, and the value rankings are a function of that, or a function of their performance overall, in terms of the things that I see as important when it comes to betting. So that's how to arrive at that. Don't want to go into any other detail. Number of rides, what would I consider to be a decent sample? Look, I think it depends. I think it depends on these essentially those figures I've given you are rolling figures. You could use 12 months, you could use 6 months. The time itself probably isn't the issue. It's more to rides, isn't it? So, some jockeys are obviously going to have more or less, but the better jockeys are obviously going to have plenty of samples. So, with any number, there's going to be variance. Obviously, the larger the number, the closer they will run to the mean sort of numbers. So, I don't think there's any magic number in terms of numbers of rides. So that's as much as we can do with Les. Thanks for the question. John, did you want to add anything? I mean, I know that he was specifically asking about something I put forward.
Yeah, no, it all makes sense. I obviously use your base rating as well, if I ever need a quick reference to how a ride is going, and I can obviously click on it and profile them however I like to, using your system, which is really helpful to me. I obviously love going a little bit more in depth with riders and, tracks that they ride well, positioning run that they ride well, whether it be back, forward, things like that, and make a lot of notes about rides in particular. I know we've cracked on. I don't want to bash him to death, but say even Willie Pike, even when he's riding winners at the moment, he seems to, like say Hell I Am, a lot going his way for him to get them home. So I just think sometimes people take, a horse, the jockey's ridden 2 winners, but has he done anything special to get them home? Not really. So, results don't always show the true, ability of whatever has happened. So I just like to sort of add those sorts of notes when I'm reviewing meetings.
And look, there's lots of different ways you can grade them. Prize money, strike rate, your own personal perception of what you think their ability is. There's always going to be differing opinions, but once again, that's what makes markets. For me, it has to be an automated type process. There's a lot that goes into it, but it's got to be automated because of the number of races we cover. Anyway,
absolutely.
Move on. Rick has asked. He said he's asked me, but I suppose John, you can answer this as well. Do you think if we had a fixed running rail in the 0 position, that it would be good for the game? I think not only would it bring out the best in jockeys, but also alleviate some of the savage biases we're seeing. Look, the movable rail has its function, and there's obviously reasons for it. Track managers will applaud them, and I think they're a good thing. And I think, look, from a betting point of view, a bias track's actually good. But I respect that, mad leaders tracks or 1-lane highways or 2-lane highways are unfair to connections of a lot of the horses that are engaged. But purely from a punting point of view, and speaking about it from my own personal experience, I like that. Do I think that it would improve the game? Yes, I think it would. It would certainly add a new dimension, and it would require jockeys to become more cognizant of bias, and it would reward those that show the ability, but also find the right part of the track as well. So, we just mentioned W. Pike in question. He does seem lately to be riding as though he doesn't know where the best part of the track is. And look, some people will argue that track bias is not a big thing, but good luck if that's what you think.
Yeah, it's an impossible question, isn't it? I agree with you. As a punter, you've got to learn to adapt and use it in your favour by sort of trying to predict it and take advantage of it. And it's impossible. You say like Canterbury, rail true is probably one of the most biased positions you can have there as a rule. You move it out 5 or 6 metres, all of a sudden the track becomes more fair and you can run on. That rail on Saturday, you move it out 7 metres at Randwick and it turns it into more of a Rose Hill setup. And same with Rose Hill, you move the rail out there, it's the same. I think you've nailed it. Like the worst positions visually and from a racing perspective are when say for argument, you can only win within 3 of the fence or something like that, and it starts to affect tactics and the way horses are ridden outside of their natural pattern, which it makes it difficult even for a punter. I think they're the worst rail positions. If they could sort of somehow try and use them less, that may be ideal, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Look, I think if the rail is left in as true, let the riders sort it out. They'll find the best. Well, the better riders will find the best going, and they'll be rewarded. And I think that's a fine idea, just as I think it's a fine idea if they leave it as it is and leave the status quo as it is. And as a punter and as a trainer, and look, we've all got access potentially to the same types of information. It's how we use it. I think ours is better than what else is available in the marketplace, and that's just my opinion and the opinion, I suppose, of many of my clients. But to be fair, you've got to do your homework first, right? I mean, we can all sit there and blow up about it after the event and say it was a disgrace, but it was fairly predictable as to how it was going to play. And look, sometimes it does go against how you think, for sure. And when that happens, we're all going to blow up about it. But when it's sort of expected and then it occurs, well, what's the issue?
Exactly.
Okay. Next question was from William. He wanted to know what do we think was the reasoning behind the big savage drift on Eduardo. And look, it was a big talking point. The function, I suppose, of Eduardo's price drift was related to a number of things, I think. One being the morning line was, most likely great. I don't have the figures in front of me for what it was at, say, 9 a.m., but at SP it was about 116. So I'm suspecting there was a drift from the...
So it has to blow.
Yeah.
Well, something has to blow.
Yeah, sure. Andermatt firmed around 9% in real terms during official betting, and I'm talking about the NOP. Zapateo firmed around 2%. So the combination of those big, firms, or especially in Andermatt's case, and the change in percentage, I think that's the reason.
I'd be questioning more.
After the race, it's easy to say, well, wow, that was a great bet. And it certainly did get out to a good price. And yeah, you couldn't have backed it probably at evens, but at 7-4, it was probably a good bet.
Yeah, and I'd be questioning the firm of Andermatt more than I'd be questioning the drift of Eduardo, because Andermatt was never going to be within 3 or 4 lengths. It probably lobbed as absolutely close as it could. So how could you possibly? And they're both first up.
Yeah, well, I had Andermatt setting back. I mean, my mat was pretty much bang on what it was. It was Markovic leading Eduardo, Athelek and Zapateo 4. So, look, in a strict rating sense, Andermatt did have figures off 2 very wet tracks. There was a Canterbury track there, which I got in the 12 range, and a Randwick second up win last time where it won as well, virtually in the 12 range. And those ratings, had the horse run to those figures on Saturday, then it was entitled to be extremely competitive and capable of testing Eduardo at its best. And we're talking about at the weights, at the set weights and penalties. So I'm not surprised that there was, robot or big team activity on Andermatt. But yeah, from a map perspective, that was the thing that was going to hold it back a little bit. So yeah, look, Eduardo got out to a good price.
There's different sorts of heavy tracks, aren't there? That's probably something to take away from it. If you went back and watched its replays, Andermatt, it was very much down the outside in a couple of those meetings where it won from back in the field on heavy tracks, and that certainly wasn't the case on Saturday.
Yeah, that's right. So I suppose in run, the moment they settled, you're saying to yourself, well, how did they back that? But
what have I done?
I can understand how they backed it. So next question here is from Matt, and he asked you this question, John. Your thoughts on the Thean Stakes location on the racing calendar, and surely if it gets moved closer to the Cox Plate, that would help bulk up field size competition, considering it gets a golden ticket into the race. Look, I mean, I'm no expert on programming, but I do remember that horse or that race used to be, I think, late September. The Thean.
I think so too.
And Michael Brow has sort of put a case forward, I think within the last week anyway, of suggesting that it race, I think it was 3 weeks behind the Cox Plate as a lead up. So it was, I remember reading the article, it was reasonable. I can't see any reason why they moved it. And it does seem to be a bit of a sticky race in terms of programming, given some of the other races around it. With the Memsey and so forth. I think the week before, wasn't it? Last week, the Memsey?
Yeah. The Wake Road.
Last week, yeah. So, John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I did. Well, the main probably thing is, why did they move it? And why is it an exemption race? And how does a mile race like this, Wake for Age race, 7 weeks before a 2,000 metre grand final make sense? Yeah, so I think there's probably a case to argue there's a few strange things going on with this one. How do you fix it? I don't know.
Change the date.
Change the date or change the race. It's the exemption race, I guess, but it's just, it's a weird setup, isn't it?
So it does seem a bit strange. Okay, Alan has asked a question about the takeouts for totes. He wants me to explain that. He said 14, if states at 14.25%, I think it's actually 14.5, Alan, or for win betting appears to be, but he's saying that the percentages appear to be more than that. Well, yeah, the percentages represents the over round or total probabilities summed in the market, and that might be, say, 117, 118. If it's 117 and the takeout's 14.5, then that actually comes back to 100. So that 117 is actually a takeout of 14.5. The other 1% or so is really made up of the rounding down of dividends, and depending on the field size and depending on the price of runners, those roundings can be significant. So, a favourite that should pay, for instance, $1.99 will pay $1.90. And so that extra percentage is a big percentage, right? So relatively speaking, so that's where you can get markets that sometimes are probably 121 or maybe even 122 in extreme cases, but usually around about that 117, 118 is about the mark. He also mentioned that he's enjoying the program and learning from the issues that we raise. So hopefully that's the goal. That's what we try to do, is help punters and help people form views and opinions and educate them and give them as much as we can anyway in terms of the reviews that we do and the previews that we do, which are going well.
What do you believe stops them paying the exact figure these days? Because rounding down.
Well, rounding down's great, isn't it? If you're the beneficiary.
If you're the beneficiary.
If you're the one that's enforcing it or imposing it, it's good for the bottom line. Look, I've heard all sorts of stories over the years that a certain team purchased the rights to the rounding for a large sum of money. I've heard that.
That's a cracker.
God knows whether it's true or not. I mean, it would be a great story if it was.
We can't lose, can you? They don't round up, like you say.
Well, nothing would surprise me. And if that were true, we'll just go to show how stupid the TAB are. If they did engage in doing something like that. But then again, they sold the goose many years ago, John.
They did. No, yeah. We sort of half talked about it before as well. I remember years ago they started doing kickouts, and it was, I believe they did say it was due to the rounding being returned to the punter kind of thing, and obviously they used it in a fashion that would also upset the corporates.
Well, they did races, didn't they, where they just had a zero takeout in the race?
Yeah, so exactly. So Black Caviar would pay 140, 140, 180.
Exactly, and the general rumor was that it was going to hurt the corporates, the big corporates who are betting best totes.
And if that was them returning our money to us in a way that they deemed fit, how are they now returning the money to us in a way? Is it odds and evens? What are they doing? That'd be another interesting thing I'd love to ask someone.
The odds and evens is a debacle, right? It didn't work. I'm not saying it was a bad idea.
It's still in place.
I'm not saying it was not worth trying. I'm just saying it was, it's performed poorly. So face it for what it is and get rid of it and move on.
Any innovative product is worth trying. I 1,000,000% agree.
For sure. Absolutely.
I'm just seeing if it still exists. Yes,
I
it does. Quinella plus odds and evens. Why do they combine the Quinella pool with the odds and evens? Is that to mask the true pools, or why would you do that?
Who knows?
Who cares? Thanks, Paul.
Indeed. Thanks, John. Thanks, punters. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back on Thursday for Rapid Fire, where we preview some of the weekend's racing. And of course,
there's got to be plenty, hasn't there? There's got to be plenty.
You'd think so?
I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but I think both states have sort of kicked into gear now. So even we should have plenty to talk about. Indeed,
and get your questions in, guys, for next week. There'll be 300 on the board. So we want something that's a bit different, bit left field, and there's 300 for the taking. Thanks for watching.
There's also a rumour that Aaron has not been seen since last Thursday, since the Brisbane Lions got home in a very close game. So hopefully he'll be around Thursday if he's still alive.
He's alive. I spoke to him on Saturday.
That's good. Beautiful. We're on.
Thanks, guys.
Hang on, I've got to find the go away banner. Here we go. Rapid fire. Boom. Bye. Thanks, guys.